I'm just uploading this as a reaction to the recent death battle that was uploaded by the official death battle channel, otherwise known as Screw Attack. On the battle between Madara and Aizen that everybody was waiting for. This is just a reaction. I'm not gonna post any clips or anything, just random photos that are not even from the video itself. But I did go through all of the details in the video, all of the different like stats, attributes, and reasonings that they used. So I'm pretty sure I have a very accurate understanding of all the things they talked about in the video. Um, my initial thoughts after watching the video are, well, to get on the good things first. Number one, at least they did try to use actual like research into each character, and they did go through each verse and try to understand. They tried to understand the general overview of each character's abilities, and they went through some of the previous things that each character has done in their respective series. So that was okay. That was good. They did that, but well, I'm not gonna get to the bad parts yet. The other good thing was the actual fight itself was really, really well made. I think the animations were a little crispy, but like just the effects and everything, the power ups that happened, the voiceovers for each character, they were very in character. It was really well made. I thought it was really, really good. They did something that was like kind of a service for the people who watched it, like the actual battle. I'm talking about the actual fight itself, not necessarily the reasoning behind the fight and who won. But like when they actually made it, there was a part where they had a split screen face between like Aizen in his like Hogyoku form, in one of his final forms for his Hogyoku, and then they had like Madara in I think he was already in his six paths form. They had a split screen with both of their eyes, like, and they were laughing. That was really hilarious. And their transitions between like each character's like different forms and abilities was kind of really good too. It started off as normal Aizen with a sword, normal Madara too, and then it transitioned into like them using their special abilities. Madara uses Susanoo. Aizen started like using his Kido. His I think he used like Guru. I forgot what it's called. He's a level 99 Kido, and then he uses level 90 Kido. And he used like his special like Kido attacks when he was in his when he was in his one of his like final stages with the Hogyoku, when he transformed into that hollow like being. And then they used Six Pass Madara with the orbs. That was really nice to see that. I don't recall them using the Rinne Sharingan. Maybe there was that one part towards the end where Madara did use it and I didn't catch on. It didn't look like they did that. They actually didn't even use Aizen's Thousand Year Blood War arc, his powers actually, because he actually has the power to distort time, and he also is pretty much almost immortal. Like he's pretty much immortal at that part. Like they tried to kill him and they couldn't. Like he couldn't die, so to speak. I'm gonna get into that a little more later, but overall, I think the battle that they actually did, the animation part was really good. But other than that, there were there were quite a few things which I was just confused about. Like the reasoning behind why they thought Madara had won the battle was didn't really make that much sense. When I completely have a strong understanding of both characters and where they come from, and also their weaknesses and strengths and abilities, and just based off of different other characters and battles that they've been a part of in their own respective universes. It's just some of the things they explained for Madara, like the calculations and the abilities were either a little off or didn't make any sense, or they were missing a few things, or they were like kind of all over the place. And some of the things they mentioned for Aizen were not even in play, were a factor during the actual death battle itself, which is very confusing. And they also they did mention quite. They actually, I think they did a pretty good job with Aizen in terms of the analysis, but yeah, they didn't really do that great of a job in terms of incorporating all of it into the death battle itself. Maybe there was a time restraint, but I refuse to believe that's the case. So I'm gonna start all the way from like just the beginning. So in the beginning of the battle, they introduced Madara's character, and they like they went through some of Madara's like history and biography, and they also like went through how he was supposed to like he was supposedly battling like Hashirama from the beginning, how he enjoyed battling. That's actually false. He never actually like met Hashirama during battle. They literally just met each other during a random encounter at a pond, and they were just talking with each other. They didn't even introduce each other's last names. I think they did introduce each other's first name. I'm Madara, I'm Hashirama, and then, but they didn't really say each other's clans. It was mostly from Hashirama's perspective, and they did say that like they said basically, oh, they were like ninja Romeo and Juliet. He liked fighting more than Hashirama. During, okay, so during the Fourth Shinobi War, that was actually true. Like, he was very excited that Hashirama was going to join the battle and fight him. But in the beginning, when they just met, they literally didn't even know each other and who they were. Like, and also, they kind of skipped a few things in the timeline. They said, "Oh, the bromance overcame the clan's differences, and the two groups merged." That was much later on. That was much later on when they did that. And then they said, "Oh, Madara wasn't satisfied with Hashirama's dream." That was like a lot later on. Later on too, it wasn't even made clear until Hashirama was made the Hokage, and then he actually he didn't. He deep down he kind of refused that position, and then he later on said, "No, I want to make Madara Hokage," and Madara's like, "No, it's okay. I don't want to be like Hokage. It's all right. It's totally fine." And then they said that they said that he left the village. So he went through that. Like, yeah, that's true. He did come back to wage war. That is true. He did that indeed. But it was later explained on. I just wanted to add in. When he awakened his Mangekyo Sharingan is when a lot of things changed. Because initially he wasn't like completely like mindless, but later on, after witnessing so many people from the Uchiha clan get killed over and over and over again, and he awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, that actually made him. I believe that was the turning point of when he was actually, when he started to desire like his power, and wanted the domination of for his own ideals. And later on, during the introduction to Madara, they said that he is the reincarnation of Indra Otsutsuki and the inheritor of his chakra, which that is true. That is true. He does come from the descendant of Indra. They could have mentioned a little more about like Hashirama coming from Asura's like lineage, because they actually did not mention that at all. Like they're actually both reincarnates of the same family, the Sosuke family. The Kaguya was the one who was the mother of Hagoromo and Hamura, and then later Hagoromo was the father. Hagoromo was a sage of six paths. He was the first to awaken the Sharingan and Rinnegan, and then he gave two sons. He helped give birth to two sons, who are Indra and Asura, right? And both of them are basically like the grandchildren of Kaguya, right? And that could have been mentioned, but they probably wanted to focus on Madara in this particular aspect. So I don't completely blame them for doing that. And then one thing that made me laugh was they were talking about how chakra is basically spiritual and physical energy that makes ninja magic. I don't like the way that they actually termed that at all, and the reason is because there's so much more that goes into what chakra is. Chakra is spiritual and physical energy that it can be used for ninjutsu. It can be used to power your taijutsu skills if you're capable of doing it, and genjutsu skills. And it is the crux of what gives the shinobi. Usually, unless you're like Rock Lee or somebody who's just... Even if you're Rock Lee or a taijutsu specialist, you still get powered up. Like, you're still powered up by the chakra that's within you. It's still... that the chakra is what allows you to perform the eight gates, the eight inner gates that Rock Lee and Might Guy have that are available to them. When they actually, when Might Guy himself was fighting Madara, that's what he was using. He was using all of the eight gates that were powered by his chakra. So you have to be very specific on when you explain what chakra is. And they did go through. I don't think they had enough space maybe to go through all of Madara's different jutsus that he has. From what I have understood online, and just remembering what he has, yes, most of what he has done is fire style jutsu. Uchiha tend to specialize in that, um, in that type of jutsu, like Sasuke specialized it, Itachi specialized it, you know. So Uchiha's the fire style jutsu is actually one of the symbolic jutsus that is performed by the Uchiha clan. Actually, I don't recall if they went through all of the if they went through like storm release and lightning release, if they went through that very specifically for Madara as well, because they were mostly just talking about wood and fire jutsu when Madara actually has the ability to use lightning release as well. But I understood they probably didn't have enough space to put this in one page. And then they said that his gunbai, which is his guitar looking contraption that he carries, is able to reflect back jutsu style attacks, which I agree. It is the gunbai. They said the gunbai is used to absorb ninjutsu and return it back to the sender. Yeah, that's something that he can definitely do with that weapon. They got that. I don't have anything to argue with that. They said Madara has torn apart hordes of ninja, right, without breaking a sweat. That was while he was in his Edo Tensei form when he was resurrected, and basically Edo Tensei user Kabuto, who was Orochimaru's subordinate, was able to use the Edo Tensei formula that was inherited by Orochimaru, right? From I believe it was from the second Hokage. Tobirama was the one who actually created that jutsu, and he was the one who inherited it from him, and he used it to resurrect Madara. And they gave Madara enhancements, like Kabuto gave him enhancements, like the fact that he has Hashirama cells, he can use wood style jutsu. You know, those are enhancements, and he couldn't die either because the Edo Tensei form, when you're resurrected, you literally cannot be killed unless the jutsu is undone by the user, or in a lot of instances in which did happen during the fourth Shinobi War, a lot of Edo Tensei subjects, they had their own resolve. They met their own resolve. They understood that what they were doing was unnecessary during the war, and they eventually they died. They eventually went away. They literally just died. Like, for example, Gaara's, I believe it was Gaara's father, had that situation. He couldn't be killed by anybody. The Edo Tensei had to be undone, but he, quote unquote, died again because he finally had his resolve, you know, and he finally came to terms with it, and he was basically gone afterwards, right? And they listed just some of the feats he had during the Fourth War. They said he took a beating from every tailed beast at once. All of the tailed beasts. Yeah, he did. He did attempt to actually fight the tailed beasts during the war arc. That is true, and he did have a very hard time against him. It didn't go that well. That is true. They said that he defeated the 5 Kage, some of the strongest shinobi in the world. Yes, with all the amps that he had, and the fact that he's a very, very, one of the most powerful shinobi in existence. Yes, he did do that. You know, he had he had many, many techniques that were very difficult to deal with. The wood style jutsu made it hard to get around the battlefield easily and fight him. And then obviously the Susanoo was very difficult to deal with in general. It's so huge and protected Madara at will. And then Of course, he had his clones, his wood clones that were able to have the exact same ability as him. Of course, that's going to give you a lot of difficulty. And the fact that they were also not just fighting Madara during the time, they were fighting like other reanimated shinobis during the time, and a lot of white Zetsus too. It's not easy finding so many different people, and all of a sudden, boom, Madara Uchiha just comes out of nowhere, and he's so different from all of the other shinobi that you fought. He's just so much more powerful and capable and experienced in battle, right? Then they said that they just added in that the Raikage during the war was able to be fast enough to move at light speed. And okay, I'll give you that. I'll say that. Yeah, sure. Let's say the Raikage is fast enough to move at light speed. Okay, he's one of the fastest shinobi during that time, right? But then something I didn't like that they did was like they mentioned that even lesser ninja like Orochimaru like were able to dodge things at light speed. I mean, when they said that, it just completely it didn't make any sense to me why they would mention that, because if you're going to, in my opinion, if you're going to compare the capabilities between like Madara and someone who's like really powerful and really quick, I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, the fourth Raikage is a good example, but then moving that between that and then saying like somebody like Orochimaru is able to dodge things at light speed. That is just I don't understand why you would want to do that to hype up somebody to the fullest, because on the screen itself, when they were saying that particular line, they said they had some, I don't know where they got this from. They had a line that said, despite being overwhelmed by sneezing that never stopped, Orochimaru reacted quickly and jumped to the right side. Although he was able to easily deflect the laser beam, there was a drone in the direction he deflected and propeller cut its shoulder. Now, when they said that Orochimaru was able to dodge photon beams at light speed, I found that to be hilarious because on the screen, if you pause the screen during the video, I'm not going to show it here. I don't want to get copyrighted, but it literally says something totally different. Although he was able to easily deflect I don't even know where they got this. Actually, I couldn't find this anywhere. But if we're gonna believe that this is actually something that's out there and that is actually correct, you wouldn't want to probably say something during the battle that contradicts what you have on the screen. Because if you're saying that he was able to easily dodge something, but on the screen it says he only deflected the laser beam and that he still took damage from some other attack, you're not really using the best example in that situation. You're contradicting your own statement. Because it's a very different thing to react to something and like to dodge it. When you dodge it, you're not even letting that object even hit you in the first place. Whereas if you're reacting to it and you're still getting damage to it, it's not really that crazy of a feat compared to, let's say, if they were to use Minato, like the fourth Hokage. I think that would have been like a much better example, because during the time that Minato was alive, he actually did have a brief scuffle with the previous Raikage before the war, and the previous Raikage, from what I recall, said that even Minato was faster than him. He felt like Minato was actually faster than him. Like he actually felt that he had a hard time keeping up with the speed. Like he had never fought anybody as quickly as Minato, So that would have been the better example, because Minato, it was Edo Tensei during the battle, and he actually fought against Madara during that exact war, and you could have used him as an example. Like even Minato, they could have said something like, even Minato with all his speed had a difficult time fighting against Madara because of whatever, because of the orbs, the six path orbs, So that's one critique I have about this particular part in the video. Then later on, they said that Madara's greatest tool is the one born from his bloodline, the Eternal Mangyaku Sharingan. Okay, it's partially correct. So on the one hand, you're right when you say that the Uchiha do have access to the Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, but not every Uchiha will eventually be able to unlock the Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan. There are certain conditions first. Number one, obviously you need to unlock the Sharingan. There are different ways to unlock it. Whether you're in a very tense situation, you have like extreme fear, right? Whether you've witnessed something that's like really, really like tragic to you, you've lost a family member or something, or in the case of Sarada in the current Boruto series, love. You know, when you feel a strong feeling of love, you can awaken the Sharingan. There are different ways to awaken it, but in order to awaken the Mangekyou Sharingan, you need to go through some tragedy, like extreme tragedy, like what Madara witnessed the death of his brother. You know, Madara. Sorry, no, that's incorrect. Um, he witnessed a lot of deaths from his Uchiha clan that were fighting the Senju clan, and he unlocked his Sharingan because of that. He was witnessing so much death and destruction around his area. You know, I don't want to get too deep into it, but that's how he unlocked it. And then he unlocked the Mangekyou Sharingan through a similar process, witnessing more and more people just being killed from his clan. It was so tragic. He didn't want to see that, and he just kept witnessing it because there was a big fight. There was just a very long struggle between the Uchiha and the Senju, right? And then when he obtained his so when they talked about Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, he did not actually just automatically have it right away, because the way they're pointing it is, like on the screen it says that like it says there's a Sharingan power on the screen. Like it literally lists some of the powers of the Sharingan, most of which are correct. I don't know if they're doing this in a general sense of what the Sharingan can do, or if they're listing this in like a specifically for Madara. They incorrectly placed Izanagi and Izanami under just Sharingan, when technically it should be under Mangekyou Sharingan, because they also listed a specific section for the Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, which I also found to be a little weird, because it should have went through the Sharingan, the Mangekyou Sharingan, and then the Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan. They should have explained is when you're able to, when an Uchiha is able to replace their eyes with the Sharingan of another Uchiha, right? That's the only way you can really obtain the Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan. That's how Sasuke is able to obtain his, when he took Itachi's eyes. And then they I don't know why they just skipped ahead. They put Izanagi and Izanami under just Sharingan, which is incorrect. The base Sharingan does not have those abilities. That's only the Mangekyou, and not only that, like not every single Mangekyou Sharingan is gonna have Izanagi and Izanami. It's dependent on the person themselves. So, for example, Madara, it's not known if he has Izanami. He has Izanagi that he used against Hashirama, but he doesn't have. There's nothing that says that he has Izanami, right? And then, yeah, that's my critique of it. They should have explained that a little better, and they should have also like categorized it a little better. And then they could have included a few more abilities of the Mangekyou Sharingan, not just the perfect Susanoo. Not everyone's gonna have a Susanoo. The Susanoo has dual swords. It has different abilities. I get it. You could have included Indra's arrow. That's something that Sasuke has. If you wanted to, because they're making it seem like this is what the Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan generally has. They could have included other abilities. They didn't even include Amaterasu. They didn't include Tsukiyomi. Some people have that ability, like Itachi has that ability. They didn't include those abilities, right? And that's just one critique that I have about that part. They also said during this video that the Sharingan can cast a Genjutsu that'll trap anyone who looks at it in an illusion, and even break them out of the... Yes, that is true, because when Itachi and Sasuke were under Genjutsu from Kabuto, who used the Sage mode, and used Genjutsu, that was actually how Itachi and Sasuke were actually able to break out of it, from what I recall. They used their Mangekyou Sharingan to break out of it. It said, in Sasuke's case, even ones as strong as Tsukiyomi, which can warp your perception of time, that was used on a. They said that Itachi used Tsukuyomi on a fellow Uchiha. Um, Izumi, that was the name of the person that was actually Itachi's lover at the time, made her live out her entire life in a span of 1/100th of 1/1000th of 1/1 millionth of a second. They could have done a better job in just simplifying it and saying that, they could have instead said like Itachi used it on his lover, Izuma. Like they could have done that, and they could have said Izumi, when Izumi was in this Tsukuyomi, she was trapped in a genjutsu that made her believe that she was in love with him, and she died as a result of being trapped in it forever, and just literally died from the genjutsu itself. Like later on, like she was in it for so long, she probably couldn't eat, couldn't drink, do nothing, couldn't sleep. That's how she died. I don't like how they use like little fancy numbers to try to like make it look like they were legitimate here. You don't need to do that. We're Naruto fans. If we're Naruto fans and we're reading this and we're hearing this, we don't need to hear that. We already know what happened. Most of us. And she said she died in the illusion. You could have done a better job in explaining what it did. And she and then they said something that was a very sumptuous statement that I didn't totally agree with. They said if Sasuke was able to break out of the Tsukuyomi, Madara could too easily. That is actually, you're kind of making an assumptuous statement because, number one, we haven't seen Madara deal with somebody that has Itachi's ability specifically. We haven't seen him fight against someone with Itachi's skill set. He was mostly fighting against the Senju clan members. Who do not possess the Sharingan or at all. They don't possess the Sharingan. They have a lot of versatility through their attacks, like different jutsus and stuff, but they don't specifically possess the Sharingan. They don't possess Tsukuyomi. That's not part of the Senju ability. That's not their bloodline. And not only that, even though Sasuke himself has Tsukuyomi, we can assume that he has it because he took Itachi's eyes. The thing is, we don't really know what would have happened in a one-on-one between the two. We didn't see Sasuke attempt to use Tsukuyomi on Madara during the fight. He just did not have the ability, like the chance to do it. He didn't have the chance to do it. It was not easy for him to do it. Dealing with Madara's, you got to deal with like so many other attacks from Madara. You're not gonna have the time to just stand there and use Tsukuyomi on him and leave yourself vulnerable, right? And Sasuke did not use Tsukuyomi on Madara during the war. Like it was not something that like did during that fight, right? He didn't. He might have used simple genjutsu during the war on other other characters. Not Kabuto, sorry. He might have used it on other characters before, right? He might have used it on Danzo when he fought him in a one-on-one situation, right? But he did not specifically use Tsukuyomi on Madara himself with Itachi's eyes. So we don't really know what steps Madara would have actually taken to escape from it. We don't know if he has the complete capability of doing it. We're only making assumptuous statements. We're only assuming that he can because you're assuming that, Madara is stronger than Itachi. He's a lot stronger than Sasuke at that time, so therefore he can do the same thing. You can't really say that. That's an assumptuous statement. Because every single Sharingan and Eternal Mangekyou or Mangekyou Sharingan has its own set of abilities, so you can't really say that everybody has the same ability and can actually do the same thing. Then they said that he had Hashirama cells that were inserted into him. That is true, but you could have also included how he did it. He chewed off some of Hashirama's cell. He actually chewed off a bit from Hashirama during the first battle with him, and also the fact that Kabuto was the one that further enhanced him using Hashirama cells, right? And then they also said that he gained a healing factor strong enough to regenerate from half of his body vaporized. How? You have to explain. How does that? Where does that come into? You know, like is it coming from the Hashirama cells? Yes. Okay, sure. You know, like they just I don't like the way they interjected it. You know, the guy made like a joke afterwards. You gotta like you gotta fix the punchline for you gotta finish the punchline, man. You gotta finish it. You know, like way earlier or after, man. You can't just like interject yourself into the conversation and confuse everybody. Because when he said that, I thought initially, like, where did you come out of? Like, why did you like suddenly bring up that he was able to have a healing factor strong enough to regenerate, and then also the Rinnegan. Like we're like that came from Hashirama cells. Yes, that is true, but you have to mention that it actually came. It took a while for him to actually manifest the Rinnegan. Like it took a while for Madara to actually awaken the Rinnegan. You know, it didn't take. It didn't happen right away. It didn't happen right away. It wasn't something that like automatically just happened right after he took Hashirama cells in him. Then they went through some of the things that the Rinnegan could actually do. They called it, the big chungus of all eye magic, allows him to absorb chakra and ninjutsu. Okay, that's true. You gotta explain, though, that it's the Preda path that actually does that. It's on the screen, right? And then it said on the screen, it listed all the abilities of the Rinnegan. It broke it down into the 6 paths of the Rinnegan. And it said that, like, he could, like, see and remove your soul. You know, that would have been from that would have been the human path that they were referring to. And they said that, like, he could summon a lot of giant meteors. Okay, that is Chibaku Tensei. That's one of the powers that he has, you know, with the Diva Path. Yes, they did mention that on screen. So I agree with that. I didn't really have too much to complain about, like, what they put on there. But they put a little notice on the same screen. It said, while Madara has not shown all of the 6 paths abilities granted by the Rinnegan, they have been used by Nagato, who has. Therefore, he should be capable of the same. Bit of a far-fetched statement to make that, because the thing is, even though Pain Nagato has shown that he can use the animal path and the Asura path and, you know, the outer path, all of the Naraka path, all of those paths, right? Even though he has shown that he's able to use that, we have to also go off of, like, what Madara has actually done using the Rinnegan itself. Like, you know, for example, Limbo clones, you know, that's the unique ability for Madara. That's not something that Pain or Nagato has been able to use. So you can't assume that Nagato is able to use Limbo clones, as an example. Right? For example, another example is when they said when you think about, like, the Asura path and his ability to create, like, Nagato's ability to create, like, different cyborg-like creatures, right? With it, like, you can't assume that Madara also has that full capability to do that. You know, you have to go by the character and what they can do, what they can actually do, instead of making assumptions based on, like, what they should be able to do. You got to look at what they've actually done and what they're able to do. For example, like, if I went on the Bleach side and I said, you know, because Aizen, because Ichigo is able to perform a Getsuga Tensho, and like, he's a Shinigami and he has a blade, right? Therefore, I can make the assumption that, like Aizen, because he's also a Shinigami, he also knows the name of his Zanpakuto. He's because he's more powerful than him, he should be able to do the same thing. That's not necessarily true. You can't say that, right? You can't say that. That's a sumptuous statement. You know, you can't say something, or because, or you can't say something like, because Urahara, you know, he is a very high level Kido master. He's able to use the exact same Kidos that Aizen can use. That's an assumptuous statement. He might be able. Who knows? He might be able to, but you gotta go base. You gotta base it off of what they have actually been able to do. You can't just say that he's all of a sudden Madara is able to use all of the paths of the Rinnegan just because Nagato was able to use them. That's not necessarily fully true. That's not necessarily true at all. Like, yeah, that's one thing that I kind of had a critique of. I can also make the same assumptuous statement, but I don't have the evidence to say that he can do it. And then afterwards, like they said that they went through this little thing where like one of the guys was trying to just like explain really quickly exactly what happened. Oh, he used Izanagi to come back to life because he avoided damage from Hashirama. It allows you to it's a genjutsu that they could have explained a little bit. It's a genjutsu that allows you to rewrite like reality in that moment, right? Like they could have said that's called the Izanagi. That's what it is, and that he was able to do that. You don't have to go through that whole spiel in order to do that. You could have just simply said he used Izanagi. A lot of us Naruto fans will understand what that means. And then you could have said Izanagi is a genjutsu ability from the Mangekyo Sharingan that he has that allows him to rewrite reality, and it can make you escape death, right? And then, I understand he was trying to fit all of that in, and that was pretty funny. I liked it. And then afterwards, they went through like the whole lead up to the fourth Shinobi War, what Obito did, getting the Rinnegan from Pain, and having Kabuto use the Edo Tensei to bring back Madara. Okay, I understand that. That's true. And afterwards, they went through some of the powers of the Ten Tails, which is very, to me, like, that's very interesting to do so. And the reason is because technically speaking, even though he was eventually the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, that's not necessarily something that he naturally created on his own. That's not part of his genealogy. His like who he was. Like that's not an ability that he inherently had. That's actually something he later on worked with Obito to create, like to manifest. Using all of the power, the chakra from all of the nine-tailed beasts, like from 1 to 9. They went through some of the abilities that he had as a Ten Tails Jinchuriki when he became the Sage of Six Paths. And to be honest with you, okay, like I have no real problem with that particular form that he has. That is a legitimate form that he was able to obtain. Just wanted to remind everyone that that's not something he initially had in the beginning. Like that's not a power that he always just had in the beginning. And they also went through like the one good thing they did do was they went through his orbs, his truth-seeking orbs. That the orbs will be able to disintegrate anything they come into contact with, saying that like Edo Tensei ninjas like Minato would now be able to regenerate due to the truth-seeking orbs. That is true. That is something I was wishing they would actually mention. They actually did that. It's just we've also seen other characters be able to fight around that. I do recall that there was a scene where Madara had the orb that was going to attack Might Guy, and I remember Naruto in his Six-Path Sage mode. He was able to kick away the orb itself, so perhaps you could explain that the orbs themselves, they are not completely invincible. There are ways of like actually fighting them back without taking damage, like the way Naruto did it. And they said he was considered comparable to the original Sage of Six Paths. I don't think. Okay, if he was considered comparable to the original Sage of Six Paths, I mean, during the time he was definitely extremely powerful. He later unlocked the Rinne Sharingan. He was really powerful, and he had he had the dual Rinnegan abilities. He had the six paths powers. Definitely really powerful. To compare him to the original Sage of Six Paths, though, he's probably still not as strong as the original Sage of Six Paths. And I don't really think anybody during the Shinobi War went like, oh my god, this guy is the second coming of the Sage of Six Paths. Nobody really said that. They were focused specifically on Madara being so freaking powerful himself. And they never really said like this is like the second coming, the Sage of Six Paths. He's just as strong as him. Is he the that? Nobody really during the war mentioned that at all. It was really Naruto and Sasuke who like had their encounter with the Sage of Six Paths, Hagoromo, and then that's how they obtained his powers, and that's when we were really introduced to that, right? And um, here's a part where I kind of got really lost on it. I don't know why they mentioned this to show something like. They said when Madara created meteors, it was large enough to show up against the curvature of the Earth, and they said that he possesses a potential energy of at least 372 petatons of TNT. It sounds great. It sounds really powerful, but the thing is, never in, from what I recall during Shippuden, never did those like meteors, so to speak, Chibaku Tensei, by the way, that's what they're called, by the way, the correct way to put it. Never did they actually blow up the Earth or do like extreme amounts of damage to the point where it was like completely unbelievable, you know. Like he also didn't really use it though. He didn't spam it the whole time. You know, he used it with the Diva Path. It was just one of the powers that he had in his art. So he used it to like a kind of gain an advantage in the beginning of the battle against the Shinobi Alliance, where like one of the Chichukage was able to actually somewhat stop it using his dust release, using his particle style jutsu. He was able to try to stop it. He had a very hard time doing it, and it was only really during that time and during the time when he was going to actually unlock the Rinne Sharingan and reflect the infinite Tsukuyomi off the moon. He also used the Chibaku Tensei to stop Naruto and Sasuke from approaching him, because they were going to be trouble for him. And I don't think it's something that was extremely important to put in with this video, but and also the 372 petatons of TNT. I would like to know where they got that calculation. There's no guide in Naruto that will specifically tell you this is how much TNT, like the Chibaku Tensei has. You know, they said he was fast enough to keep up with 8-Gate Guy. That is not true. I mean, he was fast enough to react to 8-Gate Guy, right? But he was having a very hard time fighting against 8-Gate Guy. He was having quite a difficult time. He took quite a bit of damage. If it wasn't for his regeneration, he most likely would have actually lost that at that point. If it wasn't for the regeneration and the Hashirama cells, he would have had a much harder time winning that particular battle. And that was one of his toughest fights that he had before Naruto and Sasuke got their Six Paths powers. He was fast enough to keep up with him. More like he was durable enough to withstand the attack, I would say, and quick enough to at least defend himself. But he wasn't faster than 8-Gates. He probably was not. He definitely was not like totally faster than him. Just wanted to make that clear. He said base Madara's displayed speeds on par with light timing ninja. You know, they said Ten Tails Madara would have to be significantly faster thanks to Ten Tails' power. Yeah, maybe you could be slightly correct on that. But it's not just his speed; it was also his power and overall that was able to be amped from that. They said he awakened the Rinne Sharingan, and with the God Tree, he casted the Infinite Tsukuyomi. You know, yeah, he did that. Slaved all of humanity. And then afterwards, they went through another calculation, which I don't understand the purpose of this again. They said that, like, first of all, the God Tree itself has as an energy exceeding 1 yotaton of TNT. I don't know why they even brought that up. Like, the God Tree is not something like a nuclear bomb that's gonna blow up the entire Shinobi world. The God Tree is literally, it's manifested by the Ten Tails power. The Ten Tails itself will actually turned into the God Tree, and yes, it does allow you to, if you have the conditions met, like what Madara did, the two of the Rinnegan, Sage of Six Paths Power, you can unlock the Rinne Sharingan, or if you eat from the fruit, the chakra fruit, like if you eat fruit from the chakra tree, like what Kaguya did, yes, you can unlock the Rinne Sharingan as well. But it's not something that is like a weapon that you can use to blow up the entire Shinobi world. You don't have to mention anything about the TNT. I think that's one critique I would have. It's not necessary to do that. And then they said that like he was betrayed by Black Zetsu. We kind of already knew what happened. They're kind of going through like some of the events that happened, and then they went through that like Hashirama was like, after he had died, he was comforted by Hashirama, and then they could have mentioned how he actually died. He wasn't killed by Black Zetsu. That's what a lot of people believe. That's actually not true. He died because when you're in Jinchuriki, which Madara later became, of a tailed beast, and that tailed beast is like sealed, or the power is like withdrawn from them, taken out from them, the Jinchuriki will usually die. That's what almost happened to Naruto when he had a tailed beast extracted from him during the war, and he had to be saved, and he had to have the tailed beast like put back within him. The power had to be put back within him in order to save him. That was actually what happened. And had it not been for that, he would have actually probably died. And then on the they listed some feats as well during during Madara's introduction. A lot of it I agree with, but I don't understand why summoning a giant forest around the world is considered to be that great of a feat, because to be honest with you, that was from the Ten Tails power that he collected with Obito. It wasn't just him that did it. It was with Obito that he was able to collect it with all the tailed beasts. And that was actually what summoned the Ten Tails. And later on, the Tree of Life. Created the Valley of the End. That is not an accomplishment that I feel like needs to be mentioned for a feat. If you're fighting against Aizen one-on-one, you don't need to mention he created the Valley of the End in battle. I don't think there's really any significant accomplishment for that that's going to help him. Endured an assault from every tailed beast. Yeah, okay, it shows his durability, but he didn't win, like specifically beat all of them and destroy all of them and fight all of them. You know, he did use like some of his six pass abilities to control them with his chains, but like that was mostly Obito who did it as well. So like they should have mentioned that like he endured it, but like he did not like win against him. He didn't beat them. Just to make it clear for people. Fought Hashirama for 24 hours straight. Okay, I would like to know kind of the measurement of like where they came up with that metric of 24 hours straight. You can't really say. You can say that he fought Hashirama quite a few times. You could have mentioned that. You could have said that Hashirama was like the Hokage, the first Hokage. Survived Night Guy, which can bend space. Okay, sure. Another durability feat. Match Sage the Six Paths Naruto and Sasuke. Okay, I'll give you that. He was able to fight like on par with them. Still had the advantage at many like specific points in the battles. And then you have to remember though, Naruto and Sasuke literally just got their Six Paths powers as well. They weren't necessarily they didn't even train with them. They had to get used to it right away. It was not easy for them. Like they still had to get used to the power. They still had to get the timing down and everything. So although it's a great feat and everything to use during that time, you have to keep that in mind. Naruto and Sasuke, even though they got the amp from the power from the Six Paths, they were not like fully matured in it, you know. And then they said defeated the tailed beasts, the five Kage, Might Guy, and Hashirama. Most of it's correct. Okay, yeah, he did eventually beat Hashirama the second time. Like when they fought again, he had like a lot of amps from the Hashirama cells, from like the Rinnegan and the tailed beasts as well. Like he had the 10 tails at his disposal. He did defeat the five Kage. Yes, he was definitely beating them. He did not defeat the tailed beast. Like he did not like just completely stomp them at all. He was able to withstand their attacks. He was able to use their powers and create the 10 tails that helped fight against the tailed beast. But he did not single-handedly just beat them all. That's not true at all. And Might Guy, he did not he did not like specifically defeat Might Guy. He only won because Might Guy does not have regeneration abilities like he did, and his body literally could not handle the 8 gates. That is why he was not able to defeat Madara. His body was not able to handle the 8 gates. Madara was able to regenerate from his strongest attack, but he didn't like defeat him just with purely with his capabilities only. He had other he had other things that helped him during the fight. That gave him the durability that he needed to win. Okay, then they went on to Aizen's parts, and they mentioned just like the history of the Shinigami and who Aizen was and Soul Society and whatnot. They mentioned the origin of where the conflict began, where Aizen faked his own death, making everyone believe that somebody had murdered him, and then they mentioned that like he was a soul reaper, not much is known about his past. They said that. They could have mentioned that he is like centuries to thousands of years old as a Shinigami himself. They could have mentioned something about that because that's actually relevant because he was like training and fighting hollows for all that time. That is gonna like make you look like you're a very powerful being. They said that like they then explained what Shinigami are. They said Shinigami are spiritual beings who purified those who have like turned evil in the living world. They are like spiritual beings who ferry lost souls to the afterlife and purify those. Okay. That is kind of a very general overview of what they do, right? But you could have explained they fought hollows. They also purified. They literally purified. You could have explained also not just Shinigami, but like that they and there are also Quincy's that existed that did the same thing, but had a different way of handling it, had a different way. They destroyed those. They didn't purify them and send them, but they destroyed them. Right? They could have mentioned something about what the Quincy's did as well. Because if you're gonna mention about Madara and Hashirama, I think it's just fair to mention about like Shinigami and Quincy as well, right? Maybe that's just a critique I had about the video, like in terms of like Aizen. Another critique I have is when they said that like um, when they said that like Aizen was the whole Reishi part, the whole Ryoku and the Reishi part, they could have been a little better with that. They said Aizen's body is made of Reishi, being spiritual matter, empowered by Ryoku, being spiritual energy, where like entities of Reishi are invisible to anyone without specific supernatural awareness. Though a Shinigami's body is so tangible can be damaged. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. That is very true. Their bodies are made of Reishi, like spiritual matter. You're not able to see them unless you have like a strong spiritual awareness, like some sort of supernatural awareness. Like Ichigo was born from a Shinigami and a Quincy. That's why he was able to see hollows. He was supposed to be able to see Rukia in their Shinigami form. They said that like Aizen can create incredibly powerful blasts. How weaker beings will literally disintegrate if they get too close to him. That's because of the enormous Ryatsu within him. They actually did explain later on, this is due to Ryatsu localized spiritual pressure exerted as a result of his enormous power. That they could have explained how he was able to get that. First of all, like He was one of the most powerful Shinigamis in the Gotai 13. And second of all, he got a massive Ryatsu amp after he had attempted to fuse the Hogyoku with his body. The Hogyoku is literally like the spiritual tool that he and Urahara both created in order to like transcend the power between between Shinigami, hollows, and humans. And it literally acts. It's so powerful that like if a person has it, it gets as powerful as they will. Like how much they want to get power, as much as they want, as powerful as they want to be, right? And that's essentially how he was able to gain that much Ryatsu. And then, like they had mentioned on one of their summary pages that like the more your spiritual powers rise, the sharper the movements of your spiritual body will be. That's true. That's true. But they also should have mentioned that you need to also, like, in order to have sharper movements of your body overall, it would be beneficial to actually learn a technique called Shunpo, which a lot of Shinigami have learned and have understood to use. It's called the flash step, where you're able. It looks like you're literally teleporting between place to place, but it's just an extremely rapid, fast movement. Not every single Shinigami is actually able to use Shunpo. For example, Zoraki Kenpachi, who's a captain in Bleach, he before the 1,000-Year Blood War, he didn't even know the name of his blade. He didn't even have a Shikai, but yet he was so powerful with like such a high amount of Ryatsu that he was able to just make up for it with his like Ryatsu energy alone. And his body was so hard and so powerful that like even Ichigo, like in his Shikai state, was not able to cut him like at all. Actually, he had a very difficult time cutting him. He had to have a high amount of Ryatsu later on in order to actually fight on par with him. And it goes to show that like not every character in Bleach is able to become a lot faster, like just with like more spiritual power. You also have to learn different techniques as a soul reaper in order to become faster overall, like Shunpo, right? And then they said that like he can create force fields, bend the light around him to make him impossible to detect. He knows a lot of Kido, and it can absorb the energy to make giant dragons, which I'm pretty sure they're referring to as Hado 99 spell. I'm pretty sure that's what they're referring to. They said his deadliest Kido is Kuro Hitsugi, which is false. That's not his deadliest. It's one of his well-known ones, Hado 90, Kuro Hitsugi, but it's not necessarily his most powerful spell that he has. Not only that, they said after an extensive incantation, he actually can use it without incantation. He did that against Sajin Konomura. Like, I think he did that against him. Konomura, yes, he did that against Sajin Konomura, who uses Bankai. He didn't even use the incantation. The only reason why Aizen used the incantation against Ichigo was to enhance the power of the technique. But he can actually use it without incantation, so they should have mentioned that. They said it's a black coffin that distorts space and time. Okay, that's true, I'll give them that. Then they said the plotting came to fruition during the invasion. Yeah, they went through some of the plot that happened during Bleach, which a lot of us already know. And then they mentioned about Kyoga Suigetsu, and then they mentioned what a Zanpakuto is. It's a sword that possesses a sentient spirit. Here's the thing, just keep this in mind. They mentioned it's a sword that possesses a sentient spirit. Kyoga Suigetsu gives Aizen complete control over his victim's senses the instant they lay eyes on a sword. Complete hypnosis traps the victims in a nearly perfect illusion. They actually said this. And in the battle itself, when they actually did the fight, like the physical fight, the first thing that Aizen did was draw out a sword. And Madara should have already been under Kyoga Suigetsu. And the thing about Kyoga Suigetsu is like, they should have mentioned that you cannot escape Kyoga Suigetsu using the usual things that a shinobi would use to escape a genjutsu. Totally different things. Number one, genjutsu is an actual attack using your own chakra system to attack the other person's chakra flow in order to affect their mind and their senses. So when you do a genjutsu on someone, you perform a genjutsu, you're using your own spiritual, your own chakra flow in order to attack them. And the way to break out of a genjutsu is you either channel in and focus your energy, like what Naruto did against Itachi, all right, or you get somebody else to put their chakra in you. Right, if they touch your shoulder and put their chakra in you, that can break you out of a genjutsu. Or sometimes if you have a dojutsu, like an eye, one of the three great eyes, like the Rinnegan or the Sharingan, you can see what's real and what's not in the genjutsu, and you're able to deduce it quickly and break out of it. Like what like what Itachi did to Kurenai, right? He used the Sharingan to see through Kurenai's genjutsu and could tell what's real and what's not real and broke out of it. The thing is, with the Kyogosuigetsu blade itself, you cannot break out of it using those methods, because you can't make the assumption that you can break it. Just like how earlier I said you can't make the assumption that Madara can use all of the abilities of the Rinnegan without difficulty, even though everybody who has a Sharingan or Rinnegan has their own unique abilities. Not everybody can use every ability of the Sharingan when you have it, right? The same can kind of be said for making assumptions about how Madara can break out of Aizen's complete hypnosis. Just because he can break out of a genjutsu using the methods to break out of a genjutsu that you will learn in Naruto does not mean that he can use the same methods to break out of Kyogosuigetsu. Because let me just explain this. In Bleach, when Aizen was using Kyogosuigetsu on the Gotai 13 captains and was using it on Yhwach, the Quincy, the leader of the Quincy's, the godfather, the father of all Quincy's, they were under Kyogosuigetsu even though they had an immense amount of spiritual pressure. Yhwach himself had so much spiritual pressure. You can read this in the manga, that he said he was the only Quincy that was capable of stealing Yamamoto's Bankai, because he said that no other Quincy had the power or the Reishi to match the power that Yamamoto had with his Bankai. It was so powerful, it was going to wipe out all of Soul Society, and only Yhwach was able to steal it because he was only powerful enough. But even though he had so much spiritual energy inside of him, and can naturally increase his spiritual energy, he was still put under Kyogosuigetsu by Aizen and was still impacted to the point where he actually lost and was able to be sealed by Ichigo, who landed the decisive blow because of Kyogosuigetsu that affected him. So it goes to show you that even if you can break out of a genjutsu in Naruto using by focusing and channeling your chakra, or by having someone put their chakra into you, or by using the Rinnegan or Sharingan to see through illusions, see through the genjutsu, it doesn't necessarily allow you to do the same thing when you fight someone in Bleach, like Sasuke Aizen, who does something, whose powers are different than what a genjutsu is. So Kyogosuigetsu is not a genjutsu. Kyogosuigetsu is complete hypnosis of all the senses, which cannot be undone unless you kill Aizen or you negate it by touching his blade, which is impossible because he is already fused with the blade and is casting it with his body. That cannot be destroyed. It literally cannot be destroyed. Central 46 is the leading authority of Surete, where the Gotai 13 captains of Shinigami reside in the Shinigami world. And they literally tried every method to kill Aizen when he was sentenced to be executed, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't kill him because the remnants of the Hogyoku actually made him immortal. He could not be killed by any means necessary, And they said that so I just wanted to make that clear, that Genjutsu and Kyogosuigetsu are not the same thing. They're different. And it said that Kyogosuigetsu was so strong it kept the visor trapped for hundreds of years without them knowing it. And that's true. They were still affected even years after their initial interaction with Kyogosuigetsu. However, they could have also mentioned that Shinji, one of the leader, basically at the time the leader of the Vizard, had a Shikai ability that distorted your vision. It distorted your sense of vision, right? And that he attempted to use it against Aizen, and that Aizen was able to see through it very quickly. And that's actually significant to mention because it goes to because a lot of people have the assumption that if Aizen is under like some sort of genjutsu or illusion, that he would be completely helpless, which is not true. He has fought against somebody who used illusions as well, and he was able to fight out of it. But then again, I can't make the assumption that he'll do that against like a Tsukiyomi or Shisui's special genjutsu that was like um, said to be the most powerful genjutsu in existence, other than the infinite Tsukiyomi, right? I can't assume that Aizen will be able to fight out of that. Like there are probably levels of like illusions and genjutsus that he has not been exposed to, right? Um, they could have just mentioned that, right? And then they said that he created the Hogyoku, which is an immensely powerful reality warping device that materializes the user's wishes, right? And then the moment their will falters, the Hogyoku will reject the wielder. The amount of power it grants the person is dictated by the wielder's will. Um, that is true. It can happen. It did actually happen. The Hogyoku did consider Aizen not to be worthy anymore and rejected him. But you gotta remember that even without the Hogyoku, he still was immortal from it because the remnants of the Hogyoku, the power of it, was still like relevant and still stayed with him. And then it said that realized the desire to become the strongest being in the universe. He can heal wounds, even if half of his body is vaporized. Increases his power over time through evolution. And then afterwards, he was strong enough to eventually dethrone and replace the Soul King, a being eventually strong enough. The deity that controls the cosmic balance, even destruction, led to the three worlds of Earth, Soul Society, and Huikamundo to start physically collapsing. I think they were talking about the Yuhabach when he was threatening to do that, and he was threatening to like eliminate the Soul King and absorb the Soul. He absorbed the Soul King, eliminate all of the powers of Shinigami, like all of the Soul Society, Huikamundo, and also the Quincy. I think he mentioned something about the Quincy world too, maybe not. But he was going to eliminate all of those places. Maybe they were referring to that particular instance, but it wasn't Aizen himself that was able to do that. You know, like, he did not specifically do that. It was like Yuha Bach, I think that was. Maybe he planned to do that, but it was Yuha Bach who came the closest in order to do that. And then they said that the Soul King is implied to have enough energy to hold all those places together. How it would require an energy of over 140 zetatons of TNT. 140 zetatons of TNT. Honestly, again, like, it's not something that should be relevant to this. Like, I don't think using zetatons of TNT is something that should be relevant to the question of like who would win in a death battle. Like, again, if they were gonna go with destructive power and capability, just saying that like Aizen was able to put a being that was about to destroy Huikamundo and the Earth, Huikamundo and Soul Society, all of them, would have been enough to give you an idea of just how powerful he is, like Yuhabach is, and the type of being that Aizen was able to still put under hypnosis, even though Yuhabach had the ability to see the future, not only predict it, actually literally see the future and change it, if he wanted to. That's actually more relevant to say than like, oh, this is the measurement of how much TNT will require, Then they said that Aizen is powerful enough to vaporize mountains as a side effect of a sword swing. That's not entirely true, because Ichigo's sword was clashed with his. It was both of their swords that kind of did it. Most of it, Ichigo himself said it was actually my swing that was able to do that. So we don't even know if that was fully Aizen's swing that was able to be powerful enough to do that. And they said casual energy blast can disintegrate huge chunks of the earth. He could take on armies with his Ryatsu alone. If he's talking about the Gosai 13, it was just, yeah, he took on all of the captains. He took on all of the captains. The people who were in Karakara town were not like armies. They were not people like who fought Aizen. They didn't even know he existed. They just disappeared, and some of them fainted from his Ryatsu. So he never did that with any Shinigami. He like never really specifically made any Shinigami just go poof. He fought them using his abilities. Just wanted to make that clear. He defeated the Gotai 13 without breaking a sweat. Not entirely true. Not entirely true. He had difficulty with Yamamoto. He did not engage with Genrusai Yamamoto, the captain commander of the Gotai 13. He used a creation called Wonder Weiss that could absorb Yamamoto's Shikai-based attacks, and where Yamamoto had to rely on his Hakudo, his like hand-to-hand combat skills, in order to fight Wonder Weiss, and eventually he destroyed them. But Wonder Weiss had like a self-destruct thing where like he took all of Yamamoto's original Shikai power and then boom, exploded, and Yamamoto was caught off guard with it. So, and he never fought like Kenpachi, he never fought Byakuya, he never fought those two people. But we're again, the thing of assumptions is relevant. We can assume that he is a lot more powerful than Kenpachi and Byakuya, but we can't say, oh, he would easily destroy them. I'm just saying here that he did not fight everybody from the Gotai 13. That's not true. And he did not have just no issues with the Gotai 13. That is actually factually false. Even though 90% of the fight was one using his hypnosis and Kyokusugetsu, Yamamoto was able to get to his blade. And if you remember, he was able to get to his blade and touch him and negate the effects of Kyokusugetsu, right? He created he used his Shika to create a little barrier to surround him with flames, and that's what led to like the Wonder Weiss fight. That's actually what happened. So this statement is actually factually false. He said, again, now they're making another, I'm moving on to the video, they're making another assumptuous statement that is not true, saying he should be way stronger than heavy hitters like Kenpachi, who sliced asteroids to pieces. That was before the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. That was way before then. During the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, he got Shikai and Bunkai. He got his Shikai and Bunkai during that arc. And he got significantly more powerful during that arc. And if you're gonna make the assumption that like, and no doubt Aizen is probably still a lot stronger than Kenpachi, right? Because they've never actually fought each other, and you haven't seen them like actually compete against each other. You probably shouldn't use Kenpachi. If you're gonna say he should be stronger than Soul Society captains, don't just specifically use I wouldn't specifically just use Kenpachi. It's not the best comparison. Just like how they compared Orochimaru's speed with Madara, it's not the best comparison. A better comparison would just use someone like Ichigo. Use someone like Yuhaba, the main characters, because they have fought Aizen. They have faced Aizen before. They've actually like stood face to face with him and fought him before. Right, and you could use the comparison of he scales to them. He's more powerful than Bankai Ichigo with the hollow mask before he got the Dangai form. You could have been more like specific on that. Then they used an asteroid like measurement, which I don't think is necessary again. That asteroid was actually created by a Quincy. One of the Quincy's was able to create it because he had the power of like imagination. And that's how Kenpachi was able to cut it with his Shikai, even though it was a massive asteroid. And that was during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, where Aizen got a lot stronger during that arc. They said that like Aizen transcended other Shinigami in power. That's how badass he was. He was in a whole other dimension. You could have been more specific, saying that he transcended it by fully manifesting the powers of the Hogyoku before it rejected him. And that he fused with his blade. When he fused with his blade, that's also when he transcended. When he fought Ichigo Kurosaki, they said that he was already fast as light. That's That's actually, it could be debatable because from what I have read and understood, Ichigo's actually above light speed. He's actually a lot faster than that, especially given that he got an amp with his hollow form. He was much faster and able to blitz, like almost blitz like Byakuya using the hollow form, right? He was much faster than like quite like he was much faster than Ukuriora, one of the strongest one of the strongest like Arankar in the army. He's actually a vassal from what I understand. Like he's a vassal lord. That makes him one of the strongest Espada. Sorry, I got that incorrect. He is the fourth Espada in Aizen's army of Arankar. It's not totally confirmed if he's a vassal lord. He has perhaps his power is comparable to that of a vassal lorde, but he is one of the strongest Espada, and he could not keep up with Ichigo in his hollow, like his vassal lorde form. Ichigo unlocked like a specific hollow form that was like a vassal lorde form, and he was easily able to he was using Sonido, like hollow powers, in order to like maneuver around Ukiura. And to say that Ichigo is as fast as lightning, he's actually faster from what I understand. You know, and they did say, actually, by all his power boosts, he'd be even faster than like even weaker characters. They said like even weaker characters can dodge light beams. Like one of the members from the Quincy, the Vandenreich, or the Stern Riders, they said that she was able to dodge. She was able to dodge light beams. Okay, at least you use someone who wasn't like you use someone who was relatively strong. You use someone who was relatively capable of doing that. Okay, whatever. Um, I wouldn't still use that. I would say I just would not use those statements. I would say he'd be faster than light. Despite I would probably include, however, even Aizen, without fully fusing with the Hogyoku, was still able to maneuver around this Ichigo that they were talking about. That would have been a much better comparison because you're focusing on Aizen and his abilities. And then they said Ichigo had transcended Shinigami, and even Aizen himself. They could have been specific on that, saying that he went through Dangai training with his father, and that he was able to then do that, transcend Shinigami and Hollow, and then the Hogyoku abandoned Aizen and imprisoned him, and afterwards they said that he got even stronger when he was restrained to his chair by the Gosai 13. And they said that it theoretically could be due to the chair's restraints keeping his Ryatsu from being released, building it up. A sumptuous statement again. We don't fully know if that's really the case. It could be the case, but we don't fully know. And it also said that he was able to hold his own against Yuhoba, who absorbed the power of the Soul King, and used Kyogosugetsu to trick him, who could see every possible future. And I find that hilarious that they mentioned this and totally abandoned that during the actual battle itself, because during the actual battle itself, if Aizen was able to put Yuhoba under Kyogosugetsu to see every future possibility, if he put Madara under Kyogosugetsu, why didn't you want to show his abilities during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc? You're making they said that he got a lot stronger. So does that mean Kyogosugetsu got stronger too? So that his body got stronger, his Kido abilities? Because if so, you have to show that during the battle. They didn't use all of his abilities during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. They did use his Hado 99, but they didn't scale him properly to being able to having a much stronger Kyogosugetsu effect, where in the first few seconds of the battle where he showed his blade, already he should have already casted on Madara, and Madara has literally no way to escape that. So if you're going to use that scenario and then you're making the statement, you're contradicting your own self. You're contradicting what you're saying, And then they literally said that, they literally said this, right? And he was sentenced to 20,000 years, while he was on the chair, while he was sentenced by the Central 46, right? Which, yeah, okay. And then they went to the death battle. And I had a problem with this. I'm not here to make this video. You can critique me all you want. You can say whatever you want. You can think that I'm trying to defend Aizen. I'm not doing that. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to just give an overview of what I think they should have done better. They literally made it a scenario where Madara and Aizen meet randomly. Aizen's able to be seen by Madara, and Aizen draws out his blade, right? He's able to draw out his blade, and during that battle, that should have already put Madara under Kyogosugetsu. So here's the thing. When a shinobi uses, let's say for example Madara was using a clone in that scenario, right? He was using a wood clone. He was using some sort of clone. Now, if a shinobi sees something that happens to them, if they experience something with the clone, it would also transfer back to the original person, what they've seen, not necessarily what happens to them, but what they've seen. And it raises the question, if his clone has seen Kyogosugetsu, let's say it's a clone, if it's seen Kyogosugetsu, would that also affect the original person? Would that also put the original person under Kyogosugetsu? Number two, if Aizen even if Aizen is under Genjutsu, right? Even because the way that Madara won was with Genjutsu, right? He put it's assumed during the end he had the Sharingan. He was okay. So it was everyone thought, oh, Aizen won. He was in his hollow form, and then you saw the Sharingan eyes, meaning that he was actually under a Genjutsu the whole time. Even if Aizen was under a Genjutsu himself, with the Rene Sharingan or like the Sharingan, right? It still doesn't matter in terms of whether or not Kyogosugetsu will impact Madara, because Madara still has to see Kyogosugetsu himself. So he himself will actually be under Kyogosugetsu as well. If he's seen the blade, he will automatically be under that as well. Even if Aizen is under Genjutsu, he will still be under Kyogosugetsu, which doesn't really make any sense because you can't escape it. You can't escape it just using Genjutsu and using your Rinnegan and Sharingan abilities, which is like, of course, that's what they used as their explanation. They said that like Madara won, he faked died twice. Aizen only fake died once. That makes completely no sense whatsoever. They said that like Madara was like he won because he spread the God Tree's roots with his chakra about 7 times more powerful than the best that Aizen could scale to. That is completely false. The God Tree, as I mentioned, was not from his own chakra. It was from the Ten Tails chakra that they collected using the tail beasts from before. All the chakra from the tail beasts that manifested itself into the Ten Tails. And that was Obito that helped Madara do that and carry out that particular action. Like, that is a completely false reasoning to use, saying that, oh, he's more powerful. Like, because he was able to use his chakra. They said they were extremely even matched in raw power and speed. And then you were saying that like his chakra was about 7 times more powerful than the best that Aizen can scale to with his Reiroku. That's completely false. Because Aizen used his power in order to withstand attacks from Yhwach and put Yhwach under Kyogosugetsu. And Yhwach was literally he literally stated himself he has enough power and abilities to destroy the Shinigami world and the human world and Huikomundo. That's literally 3 complete worlds. By that logic, you're using the chakra tree, which is not even going to spread out through the entire globe or multiple like planets, versus like a guy who is going to literally destroy 3 planets. The guy who's literally going to destroy 3 planets most likely is going to have a lot more spiritual energy than someone who just manifested a chakra tree. Without even using his own power. It wasn't even fully his own power. It was the power from the tailed beast that did it, right? They said that they're always going to be close to even. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that from what I can understand. I believe that like Aizen, and let me just make this disclaimer here. I'm actually a massive Naruto fan. I love both series. But I actually I heavily prefer to watch Naruto over Bleach. I like Madara's character a lot. I really love Madara. I really love, his character, how evil of a villain he is and everything. And I'm not even watching Bleach anymore. Like, I finished the series already, and I was kind of disappointed in how the original series ended. I like the 1,000-Year Blood War. But I've only been watching Naruto and even Boruto. Right? I just want to make this disclaimer. I'm not biased. I'm just saying that, like, you can't say that Madara is going to be faster than Aizen. There's no way they're even in that. Aizen literally effortlessly was able to dodge 2 of the fastest Shinigami in existence, who were way above light speed. Ichigo, who was stated to be above... They even said it in their own video. Ichigo got amps and he was above light speed. And you're telling me they're gonna be even in speed? No way. Madara's not shown the same feats in terms of speed. He was able to dodge a lot of Naruto and Sasuke's attacks while he was blinded and he was trying to regain both Rinnegan. But Aizen was already doing that with multiple characters who were like arguably even faster than Naruto and Naruto and Sasuke at that time. He was able to dodge Yorichi, Soifon, able to dodge the Captain Commander eventually, Shunsui, Kyoto Shunsui, who was also extremely fast, able to effortlessly dodge Ichigo, who was like, even in his hollowified form, who was much faster than light speed, effortlessly just dodging him without even using the full power of the Hogyoku, right? And you're telling me that they're even in speed? There is no way that's possible, And then they said the main thing that mattered were their powers and how they countered each other. They said Madara's enormous varieties of abilities overwhelmed Aizen. I don't think that should be necessarily... I mean, I used to think that. I used to think that Madara had, like, just versatility. Oh, he had Genjutsu skills. He has Rinnegan abilities, 6-pass abilities. He has a lot of fire jutsu, wood jutsu. I used to think, like, he had the versatility, advantage. And even then... The thing you got to consider that is that even if Madara has more versatility in his jutsus, Aizen has quite a bit of Kido spells. He can use up to a 99 level Kido, meaning that you can use all of the other Kidos as well. You can't learn one Kido and then skip the other. Usually you learn in a sequence. You would learn all of those other Kidos first of all, and that means they're not really... There's no one who really has a massive advantage in versatility. I think Aizen could even have a little more versatility in terms of, like, their Kido abilities and, like, versus jutsus, right? And secondly, it doesn't matter if Madara has a lot of, like, different versatility and in his attacks. When he's under Kyogosugetsu, and that's always going to be a factor. Kyogosugetsu is always going to be a factor. If Aizen puts him under hypnosis, he's not going to be able to use all of those abilities in the first place. It's completely out the window. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like if you're fighting a guy like who is able to just completely negate and absorb all of your abilities, all of them, then none of the abilities that you have really matter if they're able to absorb it. Because I'm mentioning this is because they said that Aizen is able to absorb... they said that, like, Madara is able to absorb all of Aizen's attacks, right? They said, oh, he has a Rinnegan, he's able to absorb, like, all of the attacks, even if Aizen has all of those Kido attacks, he's able to absorb them. Well, in that case, if you're going to say that the Rinnegan allows him to absorb the attacks, why can't you say that Hypnosis Kyogosugetsu is going to render him unable to even use his Kido attacks. His chakra-based attacks in the first place, because he will be under hypnosis. He won't be able to do anything physically to Aizen. There's really nothing you can do when you're under hypnosis. You're basically helpless and useless. You can't break out of it using, as I mentioned before, you can't break out of it using your normal genjutsu breaking abilities. It doesn't work. The laws are different. The laws do not work the same way. They said that the Rinnegan, another thing is the Rinnegan lets you see and remove human souls. Now, here's the thing. As I said, Tokusuigetsu is always going to be a factor, right? You can't say that Madara is going to use the Rinnegan to extract Aizen's soul and destroy it. If he's under Kyogosugetsu, he's not going to be able to get the chance to even use that ability of from the human path in order to do that. If somebody puts you under, like, Infinite Tsukiyomi, for example, are you going to be able to use all the abilities to fight the other person? No, you can't. You can't do that. You're under a Tsukiyomi, you're under a Genjutsu. Nothing, even if you have a million different abilities, when you're under Kyogosugetsu, you're not going to be able to use them when you're under Kyogosugetsu. And then they said, now one part I did kind of agree with, and which made me like feel like Madara could give Aizen issues, the truth-seeking balls, right? Able to prevent Edo Tensei from regenerating. And I was thinking before, if Madara was in his six paths form, he would be able to use that in order to prevent Aizen from regenerating from the Hogyoku, where it could like stay in the same spot, right? But I would see that as more of a defensive capability to prevent Aizen from getting closer to him and attacking him, rather than just purely off of offense. As I mentioned, even characters like Naruto and Sasuke were able, well, mostly Naruto, they were able to kick away the balls, right, using their six paths power, using their power that they had. And we don't know if Aizen can do the same thing. Perhaps it will be problematic for Aizen. The only thing is, even if it works for Edo Tensei, we can't make the assumption that it can completely be used and completely take away Aizen's regeneration abilities from a thing that doesn't work exactly like Edo Tensei. Edo Tensei is reanimating the dead. Reanimation of the dead is not the same thing as the Hogyoku, which allows you to regenerate. The Hogyoku is a spiritual, it's created by Aizen and Urahara, Kisuke Urahara, as a spiritual tool. And we don't know if it has the exact same properties as an Edo Tensei. It might have the regeneration aspect, but we can't assume that it's used by the exact same spiritual properties as the Edo Tensei itself, right? So we don't know if that will actually stop the regeneration. And then they said that Madara's ability to absorb ninjutsu allowed him to nullify the vast majority of Aizen's ranged attacks. Yes, perhaps it can. Perhaps it can. I'm not going to rule that out, but my critique is we don't know if ninjutsu has the exact same spiritual power properties as Kido. We don't know if they have the exact same properties. It's like saying that the Kamehameha wave of Goku is the exact same property as for example, I don't know, the beam that is fired from Bulbasaur, right? We can't assume that they're made from the exact same type of properties and elements. We can't assume that the Rinnegan, the Preta path, can allow Madara to absorb something that has a completely different property than what chakra is. Even if chakra and Ryatsu are able to interact with one another, we can't say that his Ryatsu his attacks from his Kido would be absorbed the same way that chakra would be absorbed. Because if that was fully the case, that means that we would we can't assume the laws are the same for the both, because you're changing things. Then that's what I want to say. You're changing things that would make sense for Aizen. For example, they said that this relates to the other one. They said that his Sharingan and Rinnegan could see through Aizen's illusions. And honestly, it doesn't make any. This is the part that I completely disagree with, and it relates to all of my previous points about how you can't equate the two things always as the same thing. You can't assume that like Kyokusui Genso acts the same way as the Genjutsu. You can't assume that like Kido works the same way off of chakra, right? You can't assume those things. You can't assume that his Sharingan and Rinnegan can like see through Aizen's abilities for illusions, because they said that Madara can break out of illusions anytime he wants to. We can't say that. He said that Sharingan users can break out of illusions, no sweat, even ones as powerful as Itachi's Tsukuyomi. You can't assume Madara could do that because Madara doesn't even he's not totally familiar with Itachi's abilities. He might have heard of what Tsukuyomi is. He knows what Infinite Tsukuyomi is, but that doesn't necessarily. We can't assume that he's going to be able to break out of it, because the thing is, it doesn't work. It doesn't always you can't equate two things and make them the same assumption. You can't say things without having verifiable proof that they've actually done something. That's the issue I have with it. Aizen's Kyokusugetsu is not a Genjutsu. It doesn't work the same way as a Genjutsu. It might have similar effects as a Genjutsu, but it does not operate in the same manner as a Genjutsu. So because Madara has not seen Kyokusugetsu ever in his life before, like something like Kyokusugetsu. He might have seen properties of it, like the illusion aspect, but he's never had to deal with how Kyokusugetsu works. You can't make the assumption that he could just use the Rinnegan and Sharingan to break out of something. Plus, here's the other thing. When a jutsu is cast by the user of a jutsu, when a genjutsu is cast by the user of a genjutsu, when they're broken out using the techniques I mentioned earlier in the video, the user of the genjutsu will have to cast it again, right? They'll have to cast it again, and they'll have to use their own chakra to cast it. With Kyokusugetsu, it's different. It's in a constant state of its shik. When it's released, it's constantly going to be putting people under Kyokusugetsu. It's constantly going to be doing that. It's not even from Aizen's body itself. Like, it's literally, they even said in the video, the Zanpakuto of Kyokusugetsu is its own spirit. It has its own properties, its own will. Aizen is only being permitted to use its power. In order for you to even stop Kyokusugetsu, you have to negate by touching the blade or completely kill Aizen. Those are the only ways. You can't break out of it the same way as a Genjutsu, because Kyokusugetsu is constantly being cast by the blade itself. It's not Aizen is the one. He's kind of like the vessel that's being used to cast it, right? He's kind of like the vessel that's being used to cast it, but he's not Kyokusugetsu itself. He's not the power of Kyokusugetsu itself. He's using the power of Kyokusugetsu, and the blade itself has its own Zanpakuto spirit that is using its own power to cast it upon the person. And you can't just assume, if I break out of it the same way as the Genjutsu, that the Genjutsu user has to then cast it again. It's not. Kyokusugetsu is always going to be constantly in a state of being cast and in a state of being used. Therefore, if you somehow miraculously can break out of it, you would then have to deal with it again, because it's attacking you again right after. Immediately right after you break out of it, you're going to be attacked once again, because it's constantly attacking you with that particular power, right? It's not like where you break out of a Genjutsu and the Genjutsu user has to perform the signs or perform Genjutsu with, let's say they have a Mangekyou Sharingan again. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's not. Also, Genjutsu usually attacks your chakra flow, where you can break out of it by focusing your chakra flow. And it attacks your mind, yes, but through the means of attacking your chakra flow. Kyokusugetsu attacks all of your senses immediately, and cannot be, and it lasts a lot longer than what a Genjutsu would do. A Genjutsu, when you're put under a Genjutsu, usually when the Genjutsu is over and it's done, you no longer have the effects of the genjutsu affecting you. Whereas with Kyokusui Gensu, it's been confirmed in the series itself that when it's cast on you, it will still affect you. And even in Death Battle, they said it themselves, it will still affect you even when Aizen is gone. Even when you've been, let's say you've miraculously been able to negate the touch, like negate it by touching the blade, it's the effects of Kyokusui Gensu can still be long lasting, can still affect you even after it's been casted, right? So the way that they put down the winner is kind of, it doesn't make any logical sense. If he was under Kyokusui Gensu in the beginning of the fight, he would not be able to do anything. He's rendered helpless. He can't break out of the same. He would try. The Madara would realistically try to break out of it the same way as a Genjutsu, only to find out realistically this would have happened in that scenario. He would have broken out of it. He would have tried to break out of it the same way as he would with a Genjutsu, only to find out he can't do that. Why? Because it doesn't work the same way as the Genjutsu. No matter how much you would try to use a Sharingan and Rinnegan to see through things, no matter how hard he would try to break out of it by focusing his chakra, right? It doesn't. The laws do not apply for Kyokusui Gensu. They do not have the same effect as they would for a Genjutsu. It would not have the same effect on the the hypnosis as it would with a Genjutsu. He has to find a way, even before seeing the blade, to negate the effects of the blade by touch. And that's only provided that they used, they were lucky because, people are lucky because, like, they used Aizen, who still was using a Zanpakuto, like, separate from his body. If this was Aizen who was fused with a Zanpakuto, right, it would have been a lot harder for him to even negate it without, like, destroying Aizen completely, killing Aizen completely while he's casting Kyokusui Gensu using his body. And the reason is because if he's casting it with his body, you have to destroy his body. You know, that's the only logical reason for it. So overall, I think even though I do see certain ways of how Madara can stalemate or win the fight, let's say they kept it like pre-Hogyoku Aizen, right, who was able to be killed, and Madara used like limbo clones where like Aizen's not able to see them. He can probably sense them, but he can't see them. He's able to use limbo clones. He's able to use like his Susanoo to protect himself from close range attacks. He's able to use, let's say, this infinite Tsukiyomi without like Aizen realizing that it's being cast upon him, and even able to use Genjutsu on Aizen where Aizen isn't like fully aware that like it's going to attack him right away. And remember, this is pre-Hogyoku Aizen where he can be killed. I can see how Madara is able to win the fight and able to gain an advantage or like at least stalemate. But if we're talking about like Aizen, who was already fused with the Hogyoku and no longer even needs his blade and cannot be killed, literally cannot be killed because of the effects of the Hogyoku, the way that the battle went in their video is not realistic at all. Like, there's no way Madara could have won in that scenario, especially if he doesn't know what Aizen's abilities are. He doesn't realize what Aizen's abilities are. He wouldn't even realize that he's under Kyokusui Gensu, right? So there's really, realistically, no way that Madara would have won in that scenario. If they wanted to use a scenario that made Madara win in that scenario, like, they wouldn't have used that scenario. They would have most likely gone with what I just mentioned. But that's just my critique. I'm not here to like say, oh, Aizen should have won the fight. That's not unfair. Or Madara, yeah, I told you guys, Madara won. It's just the way that they made Madara win the fight is just not realistic. I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen realistically. From what I understand, in terms of what I understand from both characters, that would never happen. You know, in fact, that situation would more favor Aizen because he's already seen the blade and he's not going to have the ability to break out of it unless he has help from like Obito or someone who could get to Aizen's blade and touch it and negate the effects, or he used like a wood clone. And even in terms of using a clone, we don't know if Kyokusui Gensu would affect the original user. So yeah, these are just my thoughts on Death Battle's video, and you guys can comment and say and talk all you want. Say that I'm wrong here and there. Say that Madara, yeah, it's right that Madara should have won, or the way that I think Aizen should have won is incorrect as well. I don't care. I'm just here to critique it, offer my own 2 cents. So feel free and say whatever you want, and I'll probably agree with you anyways. Thanks.